Okay, part 2 for period 8. Part 2 for period 8. Let's go ahead back to the questions. Theo. Man, I remember so many different things. Theo, your reflection in the stories. Man, I would love it. Really good stuff. I so appreciate all of you guys, the different things that you did in response to the book and the exercises, the assignment. I'm kind of gushing, aren't I? I just feel like you guys took this assignment so seriously, and that just means so much. I cannot tell you how much it means to me. I am so grateful, so grateful. Theo, chapter 24, what was it like dealing with the intense pressure of this situation? Shucks, I have to look. Chapter 24, do I have a copy? Yeah, I think I do right here. You know, I really think I've got to, I need to read the book again, because I forget stuff as I'm reading through. But chapter 24 I don't forget stuff as I'm reading through. I forget stuff when I don't read it for a while. That's how our mind kind of is. Chapter 24, okay, that's the massacre stopped. So yeah, you're right. Intense. How did you manage to stay calm and focused, knowing that lives were at stake? Okay, externally calm, maybe. Internally, a mess. Not at all calm internally. That was the worst part. You really nailed it. You know, people could die. Okay, dealing with the intense pressure. I probably go back to this idea that, you know, fear paralyzes you, and the kind of the anti-venom, the vaccination against paralysis is having a mission. You just didn't have the luxury of hopelessness, or I imagine, this is an interesting thought. I don't think I've thought of this before. Okay, I would get in trouble as a kid for acting and then thinking, talking and then thinking, instead of thinking and then talking, thinking and then acting. Maybe this wasn't a bad thing, of all those times of just do something, you know? And I don't know if that made any sense. I'm going to have to journal about that. But I think that the way to stay calm is to have a clear mission. And this was a really, really hard, Theo, this was maybe one of the hardest decisions of the genocide. The decision to stay and send my family to safety was hard but clear. And I wasn't making it alone. Whereas this decision at the orphanage was hard and not clear, and I was making it alone. So that's why I probably would put it up there as one of the toughest decisions during that time. But again, as I think back over that story, I wasn't alone. I mean, Gasikwa was there part of the time, but in the decision making, I felt alone. So, calm and focused, that's a good question. This is one of those questions where I think the conversation might be more valuable than the answer, which I'm not really sure, except part of the answer would be having a mission, that kind of clarity. That having a mission helps you, and having a next step. You know, went to the police camp, then went to the colonel's office. It was really tough at the end, after the prime minister said he would take care of it, to really trust and believe that. But a police officer that I had met, I wonder if I write about that in the book. I feel like I did write it in the book. You know, he had told me, don't go back to that orphanage. And I mean, on the one hand, that could be, he knew his police officers were helping in the massacre, which they weren't. But, you know, that could have been one scenario. The other thing was just simply, you can't do everything, which is probably really sound advice. So thanks for that, Theo. Ruby, did the death you experienced during the genocide affect your overall outlook on loss? Well, the first thing that comes to my mind here is that I think it's super, super important to talk about loss and to talk about death when people are either facing it or they've just had somebody close to them die. I feel like it's really too easy to avoid difficult conversations, and that it's super important. So I've really made an effort after all of that stuff that I experienced, that when I am ever in a situation, and I think I mentioned in the other tape, I got to be a volunteer firefighter for 10 years. Whenever I've been in different life and death situations, hospitals, family members, different times, community members who have died or on the edge of death, to just not be afraid. I do try to be more quiet than anything during those times. I mean, listen to me, okay? This sounds two things. It's important to talk about, but be quiet. I think I should say, be really thoughtful. Try to be thoughtful and listen. That's probably it. Give the not just the impression, give the message. Give the message that you want to talk with them. That whatever they say is not gonna, even if it is uncomfortable, I am, okay, let me use the I here. I am grateful to be here during this time. I am honored to listen to what is happening in your journey. So talking about loss is very important, and the most important thing about talking about loss is listening. That's probably, if I'd have written this out beforehand, that's probably what I would have written. Really important to talk about. Most important part is to listen. Thanks, Ruby. No, I can't think of the last time anybody asked me a question like that. Good question. Jules, you mentioned the big role that women play in Rwandan politics nowadays, the strong presence of gender equality. Okay, so these are things coming after our visit. That's good. My question would be, why the emphasis on female rights and not just equality and fairness between ethnic groups? Yeah, good question. Yep, okay. And what role does increasing gender equality play in restoration and preventing genocide thinking in the future? Nice, Jules. Seriously, I really think, you guys, we need to organize another Skype visit, because I really want to visit with you guys more. I'm going to talk to your teachers. Anyway, or we'll do it on the side, something. So here's the deal. One of the biggest, as I understand it, okay, one of the biggest things in terms of Rwanda's healing after the genocide is the idea of trust, rebuilding trust. And I know that there's, I know that there is research and evidence that shows, for example, that women will hang on longer in a dispute for a win-win solution. Men will quit sooner once they've got the upper hand, and so that doesn't build trust, okay? There's also a nurturing, and I know we're dealing with generalities here, but I think it's worth it. It's worth the risk of generalizing, that the nurturing aspect of women, super important. Women and men process stuff different. I think there's this book, I don't remember if I read it or not, or just saw different things and read different excerpts. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus, something like that. And I remember one thing, I must have read the book, because I remember this one thing that said men's minds work a lot like calculators, like, oh, this plus that divided by that, okay. And women's minds often will work like, put the data in, and here it comes out, and it's like, whoa, how did you get that from that? But then you find out that which you got from that, which men didn't get by doing the calculations and all of those things, really was a good idea. It's something nobody else would have thought of. And so this idea that we need everybody at the table in restorative practices is super, super important. Now, okay, I'm thinking what I just said, and I hope nobody takes me wrong in terms of women are very logical too, and there's men at times that don't practice logic. and come up with some really creative things, not being hindered by logic. So I don't want to say that, I told you there's a risk in generalizing this idea that my little example from Men and Mars and women get information and it kind of works around inside there like a computer that you don't necessarily know all the programming, but I think you got the idea. We need everybody at the table, and women often, my wife often, even though, I like doing auto mechanics and stuff like that, and I'm kind of a mechanical guy, and she doesn't see herself as a mechanical person, she will still come at sometimes and make a very sharp observation. And early on, when I was younger, earlier in our marriage, I'm thinking, this is kind of my domain, okay? Now I'm like, hey, what do you think? Have a look here. Even though she doesn't have, the formal training that I got in auto mechanics or stuff like that. There's just different ways of looking at things. So that's super important. Why? For them to really be able to work on this divide in the ethnic groups is we need the empowerment of women to strengthen the team and be able to come up with the solutions. And then not just come up with the solutions, but to follow through and live with them and not give up. Boy, you think about a thankless job often in the world, and it's motherhood. And not giving up, loving, even when we can't believe it, still loving and working. I was with a group of a community member, mostly women, but there were some men there too, this last summer, and we were talking about how are you making it through this hard restorative time? And one of the women said, our pain drives us to deeper love. I actually was talking about this the other day in a little video, and I made a graphic of it because it was such a powerful concept to me. It's our pain that drives us deeper in love. And I didn't understand that when I first heard it, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized love is like a rescue boat. They're drowning in pain. And the way that they keep their head above water is loving somebody else. And so the deeper you go in loving somebody else, the more you come out of the drowning condition. So I thought that was a really interesting thing. Our pain drives us deeper in practices of love, radical love. So yeah, those are a few thoughts on that. Very good question. And now, how are we doing here? Other questions, Kuba and Jan. Okay, 2 more questions. Kuba, in many fragments of the book, via various ways, you stated that the family was the most important motivation for you. Oh yeah. Okay, Kuba, I think we responded to this question earlier. I'm quite sure, yeah, I remember talking about this one. And just in summary, I really think I focused when we talked about this before, that yes, family was a powerful motivation, but like everything, there are many layers, many components, many slices of the pie, so to speak. And what I really appreciated was that Teresa didn't define our family just as the 5 of us. And she didn't, I'm not sure if I mentioned this when we talked before. If I did, it's worth re-mentioning that, whoops, it's not in that folder. It'll be here. That instead of saying, what about me and the kids? Or, are we not more important than Anita and Janvier? Instead of framing it like that, she framed it like we're all the family. How can we help the family? And I think that's a big thing, that when we are privileged to experience family, we can extend those neural pathways of what it means, family means, and that family way of thinking can be extended to the larger community and even to the world. So thanks for that question, Kuba. And Jan, how did you ever feel lost or unable to make an impact? Yeah, we mentioned that one earlier. Oh, no, I went backwards here. Sorry. Kuba, here's the other. How did you learn to manage your stress in life-threatening situations? I think we got into that one too with the earlier question at the orphanage, chapter 24. Yeah, but we can kind of close with something that does come sort of out of that. And it is this idea of life-threatening situations, stressful times. Rarely are they decided at that moment. I'm sure somebody says, a philosopher, somebody, I couldn't get credit for this, but says something to the effect that the hard decisions in life are made well before the actual event. Okay? And the point is that it becomes a way of thinking that then leads us. So when we get to the event, the decision was already made because we've been practicing this way of thinking before. And so the thought that I wanted to just end with here is that in the battle against, let's not say in the battle against evil, I was about to say that. Let's say in the struggle for restoration, in the struggle for healing. And okay, I'll say, and in the battle against genocide. I've got to, for me to sustain myself during that time, not to get burned out, stressful situations, activism, those things, for me not to get burned out, I think it really comes down to something that I don't know how many years ago, and I don't know where I got it from, but it's become super important to me. The idea of loving beauty more than hating evil. Okay? It's easy to hate, I shouldn't say easy, but I mean it's easy to get consumed with hating injustice. But if we're driven by an anger or bitterness against injustice, and we find injustice, we may still end up with the anger and bitterness. But if we're driven by beauty and love to bring justice, then we find justice and we still have the beauty and love that remains. And some of the practical ways of practicing this idea of loving beauty more than hating injustice is taking pictures. Even if we're not going to post them on social media or anything else, but just making a habit of looking and saying, oh, wow, that is really cool. You know, that is beautiful. Oh, wait, hold that. Yeah, wait, give me the binoculars. This idea of looking for the good and reveling it. The brain pathway people tell us that negative stuff sticks, boom, like that. Boom, it's like Velcro. Positive stuff can slide off like Teflon. Just whoosh. So they say spend extra time in the good. Give your synapses just 20 extra seconds to form good pathways, positive pathways. Look for the good in ourselves. Look for the good in others. Speak to ourselves kindly. Speak to others kindly. Those kinds of things, I think, really can safeguard us and prepare us. Safeguard us against burnout, against freezing up, paralysis in a fearful moment, and they can also help us make the decision when the tough decisions come, because we've been big lovers and big seekers, big explorers in the world of beauty and love. Yeah. All right. I'm looking forward to the next time we cross paths. Thanks again to the teachers, and you take care. We will meet up again sometime, hopefully face to face. Come into Poland or you come to America. We'll see ya. Yeah.